So as soon as this auction went up, I got a question from some jokester that said, all right, well, if I believe in the Gordita God and I win this auction, will you go to Taco Bell for like a service? Like, so much for being taken seriously. So I wrote back to the guy. I said, okay, well, Gordita God makes as much sense to me as any other God. So yeah, if you win, I'll go to Taco Bell and I'll worship the Gordita with fire sauce. I'll baptize it with fire sauce or something. And I put it up for everyone to see, and they were amused. But here's the weird part. People started sending like serious questions. They were like, why are you an atheist? Where do you get your morality from? Why aren't you killing people if you don't believe in God? For real, and they're serious questions, and you only get like 140 characters to respond back with. So it's like how you give a Twitter response to this really big question. And I would try, if they asked a serious question like, why are you ethical? Why are you moral without God? Why aren't you killing? And so I'm like, well, if you lost your faith, would you go kill someone? I don't know, what else can you do in a couple sentences? Some people ask some really strange ones, like, if there's no God, where do mountains come from? Here's the link to Wikipedia. Or my favorite, like, well, if God doesn't exist, then how do bumblebees stay afloat? Because, you know, aerodynamics says bumblebees can't fly, or something like that. And I sent her, like, some other website that explained in layman's terms how that works. And she responds back, well, I don't care what your site says. I know God keeps bumblebees up in the air. But what was really cool is more questions were serious than not, and I would post all those responses online, and people were really surprised that there was an atheist who was answering those questions, not in a snarky way if it was a serious question, but they were actually getting some answers. Whether or not they liked the responses is a different story, but they liked that. So more questions started coming, and in this week-long auction, it ended up, there were like 3 pages of questions alone that you could click through. So that helps, because I think people said, hey, this guy's answering questions, so go check out this eBay auction and go ask him something. Another thing we did, like I said, I work with the Secular Student Alliance. We put out press releases if there's a big event going on. And so I asked some Secular Student Alliance people, can you guys help me put together a press release that I could send to Chicago media people saying, you know, and here's what the press release said. Hemant Mehta, a 22-year-old atheist living in Chicago, is doing this auction. And we sent it to the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, some local TV, like no one responded, because they all had like real things to do. But we sent one more to a local paper called the Daily Southtown, which was like a suburban newspaper that goes out to a ton of people, but it's not like a big Chicago paper, it's more of a suburban paper. But we changed the press release. Instead of saying what I said it was, we changed it to Hemant Mehta, a 22-year-old atheist, and in parentheses, and a graduate of Carl Sandburg High School in the South Suburbs, is doing this auction on eBay. And whoever got it must have been like, hey, that's in our reading district. And they called me up the next day and we talked for a while. And the next day, this is the front page of the Daily Southtown in big letters like, auction for salvation. It doesn't do it justice in this picture, but we're talking like banner headline on the front page, which, and this is a real newspaper, like what the heck are they talking about? I like the first sentence. It's the opposite of selling your soul to the devil. But the great part about this is not only was it in the paper, it was online. And now people can start linking to it from all over the internet, and that was absurd. So now people are getting access to this thing all over the place. That's kind of weird. So that helps. The other thing we tried to do was, I was thinking, okay, if I'm selling this, you know, time to go to church on eBay, who would get really riled up by an atheist going to church? Who would get really pissed off about this sort of thing? Republicans. So I asked some friends, do you know any Republican bloggers who might get who might really like trashing this or something? And one of them said, hey, there's this blog I read sometimes called The Dawn Patrol, and you can even tell like the T in her patrol, it's like a cross. Like, she's really conservative, like why don't you send her an email? I'd never heard of her, I didn't really even know if she was popular or not. But I found her website, I found her email address, I sent her an email saying, hi, my name is Hemant, I'm doing this auction thing. I don't know if you might be interested in putting this thing on your website, but here you go. 2 minutes later, she emails me back, it's up on the sites. Whoa, okay. So, and she basically said, you know, I checked out the email address he sent me this thing from, I think he's legit. I don't think he's lying about who he says he is. So yeah, check out his auction, it might be interesting. And I didn't realize how popular she was, and I didn't realize that when popular people who write blogs link to anything you do, it spreads like crazy. And when she said something, it spread like crazy. So now this auction is going all over the internet. It's a couple days into the auction, and the price is still at like $0. Like no one's actually bidding. They're just kind of amused by the idea. But like by the time we get to 3 or 4 days into the auction, it's getting up to like 50 bucks. And I'm like, this is too much money, because that's like 5 days of going to church. So this is middle of the auction week, and I get a couple more emails now, people asking like, hey, are you serious about doing this? Because then I'll bid, and I'm like, yeah, I'm serious about doing it. Fine, go ahead and bid. And someone else was like, hey, I'm a reporter, I saw the Daily Southtown thing, I heard about this auction. I'll bite, what are you doing? And we start emailing. And then I get this email from this guy who says, hey, we'd love for you to be on a radio show. Have you ever heard of Kirk Cameron? Kirk Cameron, hell yeah, I've heard of Kirk Cameron. And so I'm like, and the guy's like, you want to be on Kirk Cameron's radio show? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to be on Kirk Cameron's radio show, send. And then I'm like, I send the email, I'm like, what is Kirk Cameron doing nowadays? Here's what Kirk Cameron is doing nowadays.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side roughly ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you give your hand maybe to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, is made of a non-slip surface. And as Albert indicated, is in the content. Green, too early, yellow, just right, black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with a soda can, we just place a tab at the top. So
God placed a tab on top of your banana for easy eating.
And transfer in your face. The wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice how it's pointed at the top with ease of entry, just the right shape for the human eye. There's even curves toward the face that almost so much easier. Seriously, the whole creation testifies to the genius of God.
Kirk Cameron is also on the cover of this month's Charisma, Christian Life magazine. That was Kirk Cameron sitting in a field with his buddy Ray Comfort explaining why the banana disproves evolution and it proves that God created everything. So that's what I found when I looked up Kirk Cameron. And then I Googled some more, and I found other videos of Kirk Cameron, for real, like not just Kirk Cameron's friend, but Kirk Cameron doing this. Can I get a volunteer for just a second? All right, what's your name?
I'm Mike.
Mike, are you a good person, Mike?
I'd say I'm a pretty good person.
All right, have you ever lied?
Well, occasionally.
What does that make you?
Well, I guess that makes me a liar.
That does make you a liar. Have you ever stolen anything, Mike?
Just some spare change every now and then.
So you have. What does that make you?
I guess that makes me a thief.
It makes you a thief. Have you ever taken the Lord's name in vain, Mike?
Which one? I prefer Jehovah. I prefer Jehovah.
The Lord.
Yes, I have.
That makes you a blasphemer. So Mike, you say you're a good person and yet you're a lying, stealing blasphemer. On the day of judgment, are you going to heaven or hell? You're going to hell. And then Kirk Cameron videotapes this and puts it up on YouTube. And it's a TV show going into its 6th season this year. That's what he's doing. And so this is what I found out after I hit send. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be on his radio show, and he's going to do to me what I just did to Mike, and I'm going to answer the same way Mike just answered. So I asked some friends, like, how do I get out of this? And they're like, look, if you're going to be on the show, I mean, they're bringing you on to talk about the eBay thing. They're not going to try to convert you. Like, it's just a couple minute talk about eBay. And they're like, and if he brings it up, just avoid the whole line of questioning altogether. So I get on there, and Kirk Cameron's like, hi, Hemant. I'm like, hi. I'm like, my sister loves you. He's like, that's great. Are you a good person? And we talked like 2 minutes about eBay, and then they spent 40 minutes telling me why I was going to hell. And by the way, I couldn't even hear the interview, because it's 1 on satellite radio, which I didn't have, and 2, it's always on a time delay, like